Hello, everyone. I am Elizabeth Corey, the founder of beatingtrauma.com, and I am here today to talk to you about another really common trauma response or belief system that we have after we experience complex trauma in our childhood homes in particular, but it doesn't have to be in the home. I will say that this belief probably forms most significantly when the trauma is quite consistent and caused by a betrayal of our most close family members. That said, it can develop in a lot of scenarios on some level. Maybe not as severe as in the example I just gave you, but it develops on some level, even if our trauma is not caused by our closest family members. So this belief system I'm going to talk about today is one I will just refer to as the world is against me. In particular, the world is working against me, right? The world, it could even be something like the world is conspiring against me, right? These are all possibilities. And while it can sound like the definition of what we sometimes refer to as paranoia, it's really important to know that things like paranoia come with this really big stigma. But in reality, paranoia is very evidence-based, not necessarily about the present moment, but about the past. So it's not odd, it's not unusual, it's not something that's actually hard to find in our unconscious psyches today. This is a big topic for us, and I would say that for those of us with complex trauma that was specifically caused, especially by a parent, we're going to have some version of this going on in our system. But even on a bigger level, even on a more global level, I think to some degree, most people are walking around with some version of this, right? So what I want to talk to you about is this belief system. The world is against me, or all the different ways that could sound. Hi, Trish. So let's talk a little bit about it. Again, one of the most common and most convincing belief systems we can get from childhood trauma is this idea. And it does make a lot of sense that we feel this way. As I said a minute ago, this idea of feeling like the world is against you, this kind of paranoia is evidence-based, right? It's coming from experiences we had in our childhoods. In a traumatic family, we are likely being constantly faced with attempts to knock us down, okay? Very different from the kinds of childhoods you see in all the Hallmark commercials and whatnot, right? It's like we talk about parenting really being about encouraging our children to try things, to be confident in things, to, all of these things. That's not what's happening in these households, right? There is an actual blatant, sometimes conscious, sometimes unconscious, but honestly, for those of us growing up in these environments, that doesn't matter. But conscious and unconscious attempts to knock us down, to block us from what it is we want to do. And this doesn't even have to be big things, but sometimes the things we want to do can be direct reflections of our core strengths and our purpose here on this planet. So the knocking us down is actually really kind of hitting us at the most core level, at the most the internalization of these kind of experiences will block us from really being able to connect with our most important and authentic strengths, right? Our core values as a person. So that just makes it all even worse, right? Because then we're lost. We're like, well, I can't do anything that I thought I was here to do. So what do I do, right? That's the messaging. So I want to say hi to Carol and Katie. Thank you for being here. But I want to talk about why. Why is it that these people are going after the things that are just, the strengths that are most important to us, the things that matter most to us, the potential plans for our future that are going to give us the best life? Why is it that those are the things that are being attacked, that are being knocked down? And I have some answers for you. Now, I have 4 examples here, 4 things, 4 reasons. There are probably many, many more. And if you have some, please throw them in here as well. But I'm going to give you these just to kind of get you thinking about why it is that people would do this, right? And remember, I'm talking about families with complex trauma, families that have likely had generational complex trauma for years and years, hundreds of years, who knows how long, right? So these are some of the human patterns, the relational patterns that have been in existence within these families for generations. So let's talk about why. The first one is a whole lot of unconscious and sometimes quite conscious jealousy. These people were knocked down. Their parents were knocked down. The generation before that was knocked down. And so it becomes this thing where, well, if I couldn't do it, then this little kid who's all excited about it isn't going to do it, right? So there is that. And I do believe there is, I'm not a huge DNA person because I believe that through trauma recovery, we can change all that anyway. But I will say that it does seem that certain gifts do run in the family. That doesn't mean you've seen that gift manifest in your family, the one that you have, because it may be that it has been not allowed within your family for whatever reason. This particular gift was not allowed to express itself. Could go back many, many, many generations, maybe during a time when the gift was particularly dangerous. I don't know. But I will say that there can be a lot of jealousy when a new kid comes along and is expressing this gift, and that gift exists within the whole family, but it's been shut down. You're going to see this attempt to knock down that next person with the same gift, okay? So that's one reason. The next one is the need to break our confidence so we don't speak up, okay? Because here's the truth. When we have a gift, an amazing gift we have to give to the world, and we're allowed to explore that thing and not be knocked down, we're going to develop some confidence. I mean, sort of a guarantee, really, when you think about it. If you're doing what you're meant to do on the planet, you're going to be happy, joyful even, and you're going to be confident. And you're going to move forward into the world like in a really positive direction and in a confident way, okay? That means that if something is happening from a traumatic perspective in your life, you are far more likely to speak up about it and be honest about it, and that's not okay, right? So the confidence that comes from that gift is not acceptable. It must be knocked down, right? Another reason why we may feel like we're being knocked down is because many times when we are doing what we love and expressing what we need and building confidence in ourselves, we are also building relationships with people. Our confidence is just kind of a natural attractor to people. Like, people love people that are confident. So they need to block, a lot of times they'll need to block relationships specifically with people who are outside the trauma circle, right? So these are people who don't know there's trauma happening and may respond to hearing about this trauma with some kind of protective angle, right? So these people need to be blocked. These people the relationship we're developing with these people needs to be severed, right? Like that's an absolute necessity in families where they are repeating complex trauma from generation to generation. So when we meet people, when we have confidence, when we are expressing our gifts, those people are not likely people who are going to be towing the family line, towing the trauma line, so to speak. So they need to go. So many times we will find that one of the ways that we feel like the world is against us is relationships that we form, especially relationships where we feel a lot of optimism and positivity about that relationship, will not last, okay? Not because of us, but because of others who are trying to make sure that we are not getting outside of the circle we are allowed to be in, right? So, and then the last example I have, again, there could be many, 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 many examples of why they're doing this, but they need to build our futility so that we don't try too hard to break out of that family pattern. You know, a lot of times we'll hear about this concept of scapegoats, right? So scapegoats are usually people with a strong tendency towards breaking out of family patterns. And so they have become the most attacked person within a family, the most knocked down, the one whose credibility is most significantly attacked in general. These scapegoat people in families are the ones that have been deemed, either consciously or unconsciously, as the most dangerous. Like, this is going to be the person that messes up what the family mask has been, like all the work the family's done to try to hide who they are and what they're up to. This is the person who's going to mess it up. So that's the scapegoat. So that person gets particularly knocked down because they need to. So they need to is develop and establish this futility in that person so that they don't feel like there's anything they could do about it, right? So again, these are all ways in which they develop in us this feeling that the world is against us because they're constantly working to mess things up for us, to ruin things for us, to stop us from doing what we love. This is a huge, huge pattern in those of us with complex trauma. Again, especially when we are betrayed by our most core family members, like a mother, a father, a sibling, a combination of all of them, right? This is where we're going to see this develop most of all. Amy is saying, that makes sense. I fought back, so I was particularly dangerous, and I struggled the most with futility. Yes, they hit us hard with the futility when we are kind of saying, hey, I don't like this. I don't like what's going on here. This isn't working for me. I'm going to do what I want. And we get hit the hardest. I can say we, because I can relate, right? Obviously, I'm a talker. You're listening to me now. So I was always deemed quite dangerous, and I was very often the scapegoat, right? So the next thing I want to talk about is what our controllers do with this. Okay, this is important. There's two parts. All the parts are deeply impacted by this. So there's two parts who play this out the most in our adult lives. One being the karma kid, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. The other one being the controller. When we are still a child and the controller comes in and the controller is experiencing all of this external sabotage, they start to develop certain survival skills as a part of this trying to battle this constant sabotage and attempts to knock us down. So the controller can start to look like the survival skills can start to look like controlling everything, for example. Like I was just talking to a client today about controlling the weather, controlling people, controlling anything and everything, and usually trying to control things that are in fact not controllable. To the controller, the idea of not controlling things doesn't even make any sense, truly. Like they don't understand living in a way where you're not controlling everything. It's like gibberish. They're like foreign language. So they become really hyper vigilant, right? Because they're watching around every corner for what's going to come down. Where's the sabotage going to come from this time? Are they going to hit me like from the right? Are they going to hit me from the left? Like I got to watch everything so we know where it's coming from because it's coming. And the controller's not wrong, right? Like it is coming. When we're children, it's coming, right? So that's important. The controller's developing that skill. Also, avoiding all risks and unpredictability. So the controller's like, if something isn't a slam dunk, if something isn't an absolute guarantee, if I can't see how I'm going to get from point A to point B, I'm not engaging in that thing. I will not do it because I can't, from a controller perspective, as a child, they can get knocked down even if they can see point A to point B very clearly, honestly. So there's no way they're going to take a chance on something that actually has some unpredictability to it. No, of course not. They're like, no, I'm not even going to go there because it is not worth my effort and time. And again, like I said earlier, paranoia is evidence-based. So that controller is establishing survival skills that make a ton of sense for your childhood. The problem becomes later, right? And that's what we're going to talk about next. So we don't get out of this in childhood. The controller works very hard to get out of it in childhood, But it never really happens because guess what? You're one child fighting against what is usually multiple adults in a world where they have already figured out how to do this. They've seen it. They saw it actually themselves. But, you have no chance. Okay, look, I want to be clear. You have no chance in childhood of thwarting these, attempts. They're gonna win, right? They're gonna win. They have to win. It's adults against a child living in the same house. There's no way it's not going to work out for you, right? And so all that self-blame you've got in you, okay, I'm countering that. I'm saying there was no opportunity for you to come up with a solution to this. So stop blaming yourself. Now, I know you're not just going to go, oh, okay, I'll stop blaming myself. It's hard, but I'm telling you, I'm just planting that seed. So what happens is we become more and more untrusting. We become more and more futile as time goes on. So when adulthood hits, we are carrying all these beliefs in the unconscious. So we're carrying the controller beliefs that, they need to use these survival skills all the time. The other thing you're carrying, which is really yucky, is the sabotage. The sabotage becomes an internal job because the karmic kid internalizes what start to begin to form as what I will call contracts. So it's not just that your family blocks you from these things that you wanted to do as a child, but then they tell you you are never to do them. Now, do they blatantly say it? A lot of times they do. We may not remember them saying it because a lot of that hits the unconscious, but most of the time it is very clear to the karmic kid that these are unacceptable activities for us to do. So the sabotage becomes an internal job. The controller is still trying to live some kind of life despite these contracts. So they're grasping at whatever they can get because the controller does, in fact, want to have success in the world, at least by world definitions. And so this leads to this constant inner parts battle. And that means full-time anxiety of the controller going, I'm going to find success, and the karmic kid going, no, you won't. No, you won't. No, you won't, right? You might be familiar with this concept. And this is what has a tendency to come out of a childhood with constant sabotage, getting us back to this idea that the world is against us, right? That is the notion we're dealing with here. And it is not an easy notion to release from our systems, but it is possible. And next, I'm going to talk about some of the writing prompts we can use to begin to shift out of this way of thinking. It's a long-term investment, okay? But it can work. First, I've got to read this comment. Wow, such insight. I moved to another state in my 29s and decided to start nursing school. Didn't tell my mother, didn't want to hear her criticism. She was so angry when she heard from someone else. Her first question to me after hearing was, why would you want to be a nurse? It's such a dirty profession. Fast forward 45 years retiring from a fantastic profession. Yes. And this is a really important example. Another thing that the controller tends to do that you're bringing up here, I'm going to include it in my controller survival skills now, is hiding. And actually, it's really interesting because I've been noticing this about myself this week and still didn't include it. That's probably my controller going, there's no need to talk about that. But you're bringing it up. Hence, the universe is helping me out. This idea of hiding things from them. Now, in childhood, that doesn't usually work. They figure everything out because they're looking for everything. They're watching everything. But in adulthood, we can have some success at this. We can hide things from our family. I used to hide relationships. I would hide positive steps I was taking. I even hid that I was getting my nails done because I knew as soon as I told my sister I was getting my nails done, she'd tell me, why the hell would you do that? And judge it and do all the things. And that's exactly what happened, what she did here. So we tend to hide things from our families of origin, right? Because we know that when they hear about it, they're going to try to knock it down, get us out of it. Like, I signed up for my master's of social work when I decided I was going to completely switch careers. And oh my gosh, the noise coming from my family was something else, something else. But I didn't tell them right away. I had already started my classes. I was well into the first semester before they knew about it. And that's something we do. We hide things. And it's understandable that we do that, honestly, because Jan, you give the perfect example of what happens when you tell them, right? And it is true. Every time I hid something and then they found out about it, they were extremely unsupportive of that thing. So, in general, I don't think it's a bad thing to hide things from family, even once we're in adulthood. The problem becomes when we're constantly hiding, even from people who will support us. And that's what I want to talk about next, is the fact that most of these survival skills that the controller has, they follow us into adulthood and they don't help us out anymore. Don't get me wrong, they may still help in managing family, but when we start to move away from family and into the life we really want, and we start to make our relationships a little bit better, start to see some support coming from others, and really explore our authenticity, these survival skills can kind of get in the way. Not kind of, they do get in the way. So what we want to do when we start to see these tendencies show up is we want to write from that message, that belief, just a little bit harder, okay? This can be translated to sleep a little bit less, take fewer breaks, get a bit smarter, right? Like the list goes on and on. Then I can control this. So whatever your word is here, if I do X, sorry, I've been teaching math lately, so now I'm on this whole XY variable thing. If I do X, I can control this, okay? 9 times out of 10, whatever it is the controller is trying to control here, they can't, okay? I promise. There are exceptions, but most of the time, they can't. So watching for that attempt to exhaust you to try to control something that is uncontrollable, right? So that is a great writing prompt. The next one, it's a bad idea to take any risks, right? This gets into this idea that, like honestly, as a child, even if you had done something without any risks, there was still a chance it wasn't going to work out because of the intentional sabotage coming from your family. So there's no way your controller is going to want to take any risks. They just don't trust. And they don't trust because in childhood, they shouldn't have trust. It was a smart decision, right? But now it's not serving you anymore. As a matter of fact, risks are a big part of life. Mistakes are a big part of life. Getting knocked down and getting back up is a part of life. But honestly, the controller's really tired of it. They're tired of it and they just don't want it anymore. They want something easy. They want something risk-free. They're done trying, and that's understandable. I get it. But we have to keep kind of moving that controller into taking small risks at first. Just small risks is fine. Little things. I mean really little. Just practice taking little tiny risks. The next writing prompt is don't do it if it's unclear. Now, there's a lot of words you can use here. Unclear, unpredictable, whatever that word is for you that says, this isn't going to go well because I can't see the finish line, right? And it does play into risks too. But sometimes I've noticed I'll start something. Maybe it's a creative project or I'm like, I think I'll write this. And the controller will go, why? Like, what are you going to do with it? What's the goal? How are we going to get there? What's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the final step? I need all the steps. The steps need to be laid out. If I can't see the end goal, I don't understand why we even start. This is the controller, right? We're supposed to start stuff when we can't see the end goal, if I'm honest. So that's something to write from if you hear it in your system. Now, let's talk about what's on the other side of this, which is your karmic kid. Your karmic kid has internalized the family abusive tactics that knock you down, okay? They've got those in there. There's 2 real strong emotions that you're going to see. First of all, you're going to see futility, and that futility is going to be driven by shame, okay? So they're going to come at you with that. They're going to try to stop you in your tracks before you start, especially if it's something that feels threatening based on what you weren't allowed to do as a child. That's why the controller tends to push you in directions that are not that, because they don't want to wake. It's like they don't want to wake that sleeping giant within you. They don't want to get that karma kid going. So what are some of the things the karma kid's going to say to you? It's never going to work. Just as simple as that. Like, one of the most common karma kid writing prompts I use is why bother. Actually, one of the biggest ones for me. I use it almost every day. Every time I'm taking a step that is bringing up karma kid resistance. And I feel that futility sort of sneaking its way in, making me tired, making me wonder why I'm bothering. Yeah, I'll sit down and go, why bother? It's not going to work. It never works. It's never worked. Look at childhood. Nothing ever worked, right? It's never going to work. Stop trying. Right? So that's the karma kid futility message we want to write from. Another one, everyone is against you. This is where we start to get into that paranoia, right? Because in childhood, everyone was. So we want to use this to help us out in adulthood. If something doesn't work out for us, or if somebody turns out to not be terribly supportive, this message might start to come up. Everyone's against you. Don't bother. Why bother? It's never going to work, right? And then the last one is, you will never be rewarded for all of your effort, or whatever words work for you there. This is a big one for kind of blocking that controller energy. Controllers can get really manic because in the end, all controllers want is to be rewarded. They want to be seen, want to experience positive feedback from the world around them. The perfect scenario for a controller would be everybody loves them. Obviously, it's not going to happen, but that's actually what they would like. And honestly, they would strive for that. So the karma kid comes in and says, give up. You're not even going to get, not only are you never going to get it from everyone, you're never going to get it from anyone. That's the karma kid's belief. They're going to come at you like that. We want to write from that, right? Amy's saying you're going to get hurt, right? Great example. These are all these sort of futile messages, but they have a basis in shame. And that's also important to understand. If you hear it's never going to work, they're saying because you're not good enough, right? It works for other people, but it's never going to work for you. Right? And these are messages we heard from our families. It's everyone is against you. Not everyone is against everyone. Everyone is against you. It's not going to work for you. You are not going to experience anything positive because it's you, right? So we want to let that go where it goes. And that's going to help calm that controller down some so we can take a breath when we start working with that karma kid energy. Okay, so these are really powerful prompts that will help you. Rebecca's saying, even if you can achieve it, how will you maintain that level forever? It's a fluke that you earned it. You'll eventually fail. Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how much I hear the fluke thing. I hear it so much in my system. And actually, some of the times that's a controller, especially if I'm doing something outside of the controller's comfort zone and it works. Immediately, I hear the controller say, you just got lucky this time. So that is a big message in our systems. And again, it's especially powerful when we are doing something that's a bit closer to who we authentically are and to our purpose. But it will show up with anything. Even if you're doing something really inauthentic and it works, like your controller is pushing you to do something and you succeed, you may hear this from the karma kid, right? Janice saying, great writing prompts, realizing how much I have lived like this and still do. Thank you so much. You know what? You're not alone, Jan. Everyone to some degree is living like this. For those of us with complex trauma from the family of origin, from those immediate caregivers, this is way worse. We've got it on steroids, right? So we need to hit this thing hard. The futile, shaming karma kid messages, the controller's hypervigilance and panic that it's not going to work. Keep working with this. Use these writing prompts. Really get to know these parts and hear them out. It is a long-term investment. As I said at the beginning, we will work with these parts for a while on this, but honestly, the benefit is worth it. It really does reflect the effort. So every time your controller says, let's just try to cheat and go this way and get around, you can't get around it. You can't get around the karma kid. Eventually it's going to catch you. So stop and work with the karma kid, release the karma kid energy. And then you can see long-term, as you were saying, Rebecca, here, then you can see long-term maintenance of a certain level of living that is more in alignment with where you deserve to be, really, in the scheme of things. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you all so much for being here. It's funny, I thought I didn't have enough notes to keep going, but apparently I had a lot to say on this topic today. So thank you all so much. And I look forward to talking to you guys next Tuesday. Same time, same place. I hope you guys have a great week. Bye.